We have spent quite a few days here in cold, cold places like the tundra and the taiga, and it is now time for us to travel to the tropical rainforest. If there is a place, in my opinion, that's almost the exact opposite of the tundra, it would be the tropical rainforest. In the tundra, the sunlight is not very intense. In the tropical rainforest, because of where they're located on the equator, it is extremely intense. In the tundra, it is the coldest of all the biomes. The tropical rainforests are one of the warmest. Not the warmest, but one of the warmest. In the tundra, the soil is terrible. In the tropical rainforest, it is fantastic. And in the tundra, it is one of the driest, if not, yeah, it's probably one of the driest. I know the desert's a little bit drier. The tropical rainforest has the most rain. So it literally is like the complete opposite of the tundra. Now, the rainforests, this is a pretty amazing stat, are home to half of Earth's plants and animal species. Half of the species of plants, half of the species of animals that are on this earth live in the tropical rainforest. That is a pretty amazing stat. It has tons of diversity in plant life and in animal life. Those birds that we talked about that like to migrate from these winter places often go to the tropical rainforest because it stays warm there all year long. These forests are pretty amazing because we continuously get amazing medical discoveries from the plants and from the animals that live there. And it's almost on a daily basis that we're discovering something new there, because many of the secrets that we need to find are hidden in the plants in the tropical rainforest. The plants and the animals completely depend on each other. It is extremely important, and all of their symbiotic relationships need to happen in order for the tropical rainforest to survive. But this makes the tropical rainforest vulnerable to being disturbed, because if you change something in the food chain, it's not able to adapt fast enough to save it. If there's like an invasive species of snakes that jump in, normally there would be another predator of the snake that would move in. It doesn't happen that way. Those snakes end up taking out very specific mice that might eat a certain plant, and then when they poop out the seeds, it starts to grow new plants, and now that's being disrupted, and it really does affect the tropical rainforest in that domino fashion that we've talked about. The tropical rainforests are also important because they help, not only is there rain there, they help to maintain weather patterns around the world. The water that evaporates from their tree, or the transpirates from the trees and evaporates from the grounds and the rivers and things in these places, move water around the earth, and it's extremely important that we have that. Obviously, with this many plants, and these plants are releasing oxygen, they are a huge producer of the amount of oxygen that we need as humans in order to survive. So let's talk about the climate. They are warm all year long, and even like during the day and at night. Here, I think there's a big difference. During the day, I can be outside. It's kind of warm. At night, especially this time of year, it's a little cool. But the temperatures here in the tropical rainforest pretty much stay about the same, whether it's day or night, all year round, between 70 and 85 degrees. And it is a very moist environment. They have a humidity of 77%, or a little higher, meaning that in the air, it is saturated with water in the form of water vapor at about a 70 to 80+% level all year round. Let me explain what humidity is before we get into weather. You know those summer days where it's hot outside, but it's also like muggy? Like you just walking from the house to the car, you already start sweating. That's mainly because of the humidity. Because there are days when it's hot and you're like, oh, it's hot. But then there's days and you're like, oh, it is like gross out here. I'm sweating just standing here. That's because of humidity. And it's like that all the time. Remember when we talked about the tundra, or even the 10 to 30 inches of rain in the taiga, and we could even go to the savannas and talk about the rain there, even in the plains, like when we're talking about the prairies and the amount of rainfall there. Nothing. The rainforest laughs at them. 80 to 400 inches of rain a year. You read that right. 400 inches of rain per year. It can rain as much as 2 inches in 1 hour. If it rains 2 inches in 1 hour here, we would have flash floods everywhere. And if you've ever driven up and down Friendship Ledford Road, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It sprinkles and that road floods. I hate driving home on the days that it rains because that's the way I go home, and that road is awful. Every driveway is like flooding the road with water. I can't even imagine. It would be underwater. I would need a boat to get home on Friendship Ledford Road if it was a rainforest, because 80 to 400 inches is an insane amount of water. So we've already talked about the sunlight in the rainforest is extremely intense because the rainforest, most of them are found along the equator. And that's the part of the earth that gets the most intense sunlight, again, due to that tilt of the earth. We've talked about the climate. And the climate in the tropical rainforest and the more abiotic factors is, again, between 70 and 85 and tons of rain. We've talked about the water. 80 to 400 inches of water per year. And that is an insane amount of water. And let's think about the soil. In Miss Klein's class, I know that she often asks you to make an inference. Using what you know and what the text tells you to come up with an educated guess about what's going on in a story or something of that nature. Let's think about this. Half or even more of the world's plants live in the tropical rainforest. What do you think the soil is like? We can even look at the plants in our rooms and make a guess on that. The soil has to be amazing in order for all of those plants to grow the way that they do, and that is the case. It has unbelievably amazing soil. The plants. There's one type of plant found in a rainforest. It's called an epiphyte. They live like on the surface of other things. If you've ever seen a vine growing around a tree, that's very similar to what an epiphyte is. Now, the reason why it does that is we know that all plants need sunlight in order to survive. With all of these giant tall trees in the rainforest and their big branches and leaves, it gets kind of dark at the bottom of the rainforest because of the canopy that covers everything. And because of that, some of these plants have a special adaptation where they grow up another tree and they stick their little flowers out at the top so that they can go through the process of photosynthesis and send those sugars and things back down the vine so that that plant can survive. And that's something that's very important. They have to have sunlight in order to survive, and the canopy of the rainforest tends to make things fairly dark. You're going to find mosses and ferns, all sorts of orchids. There are 20,000 different types of orchids in the rainforest. That's insane. And what do they have to adapt to? I mean, they've got perfect temperatures. It's the amount of rain. The plants there have to adapt to the amount of rain, and they have to be able to survive with that much water around. So their roots have to be a little deeper, and they have to be able to spread out to keep their cells strong, because the earth there is pretty saturated all the time. And around here, if we get too much rain, often trees will fall, not because they're old, not because they're dead, but because the ground gets so wet that it can't support the weight of the tree anymore. In the tropical rainforest, they have deeper roots, and the roots spread out further so it can support the trees and the bushes and other plants so that it can be able to not fall down, because that would not be a good thing if all the trees fell down because it rained in the rainforest. Here's an epiphyte, just to kind of get you can see how high up in the air you are with one of these epiphytes. What about your animals of a tropical rainforest? Well, they're pretty unique, as you can see in the background with the picture here, with this toucan. again, they are home to half of the animals on Earth. Now, in order to live in this environment, you might have to consistently live in a tree. You might consistently have to live in a tree, and a lot of that has to do with predators, but also because it's too dark on the floor for you to really be able to get around, and you also need to be able to find food. So you might have like some mammals, like some monkeys and things, birds and reptiles that you would see there, and that's extremely important. And so a lot of these animals are very, very brightly colored. They're brightly colored, and some of that is to scare off other animals, because typically bright colors like that, especially on your insects, means that they are poisonous and they are not good for you, like your poison dart frogs. A lot of these animals have adapted to eating a lot of fruits because there are a lot of fruits that grow in the tropical rainforest. There is so much food and shelter available up in the trees. There are some animals that never leave the trees. They spend their entire life in a tree, and they never hit the forest floor. There's just that much food and shelter in the tops of those trees. The birds are very important in the rainforest because as they eat a lot of these fruits and other things off the trees, seeds either fly out of their mouth or fly out the back end of them when they're done with it. And that hits the ground, and that starts new growth. And that's very important. The droppings of birds help grow new plants on the forest floor. And I think that that's extremely important. Again, remember, a lot of the migratory birds come here. They say, hey, it's nice and warm, lots of food. It's too cold up in the tundra right now, or the taiga. I'm going to move down there for a little bit while it's warm. I'll go back up there in the summer when it's in the 50s. And so they enjoy that. More animal adaptations. One example is the New World monkey. They have a tail, a prehensile tail that curves around the branches that helps them to hold on even tighter with their hands and everything else while they are in the trees. So monkeys have tails. It's for balance, and it's also to help them hold on while they are up in the trees. It's another animal adaptation that you might see. Insects are what makes up the largest group of animals in the rainforest. You're going to have butterflies, annoying mosquitoes, the super cool walking stick insects, super mean ants. If you've ever watched the Coyote Peterson, he's gone to the rainforest and gotten some ants and some other things out and let them sting him. I'm going to check and see if we can watch one of those videos at school. That might be kind of cool. As long as he doesn't say anything terrible, we'll do that. But there's tons of insects, and a lot of them are, again, like I said, they're brightly colored, which keeps away the predators, because predators don't want to eat brightly colored insects because they're usually poisonous. Just to kind of very, very quickly have that summarization of notes that we always like to look at before we start writing our paragraphs in our Google Doc. Tropical rainforests have, again, the four main abiotic factors: sun, soil, climate, and water. The sun is the most intense here because of the tilt of the earth, and because the equator of the earth gets the most intense sunlight. That's where a majority of our tropical rainforests are as well. The soil here is fantastic. The reason why is it supports so much plant growth. The climate, it pretty much stays warm here all year long. And the water, there's tons of it, right? 80 to 400 inches of rain per year is insane. And it's pretty much raining nonstop. It's always going to be doing something, because because it's so warm there and there's so much evaporation going on, the clouds can't hold that. The evaporation and the condensation happens so quickly that precipitation quickly follows that as well. And we have our water cycle rolling pretty quickly. Our biotic factors, again, this is home to half the Earth's populations of plants and animals. Okay, there's tons of plants, tons of animals. Monkeys, frogs, insects, birds, and I'm not even barely touching like the surface with all of that. But they all have to adapt to the rain. And many of those things never leave the trees. Many of those animals never leave the trees. And remember, those birds, and even monkeys too, when they're eating and pooping, their droppings hit the ground, and a lot of that time is going to help plants to repopulate and regrow. Again, don't forget to hit the smash the like button and crush the submit button as well. And we'll see you on the next one.